You've been scrolling through a sea of CNC routers, wondering which one will actually sit on your bench, stay reliable day after day, and give you a decent return on the money you're about to spend. You're not just after a laundry list of horsepower or a fancy control board. You want a machine that won't quit on the first big job, that's straightforward enough to set up after a weekend of reading manuals, and that feels solid enough to keep running as you grow your hobby or small shop business. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started looking at desktop-size CNC routers, the first thing that made me hesitate was the trade-off between a compact footprint and the ability to actually cut the materials I need: wood panels for furniture, acrylic for signage, maybe a bit of aluminum for custom brackets. The Axiscreat 6060 promises a larger work area than many of its price point competitors, and it pairs that with a closed-loop NEMA 23-stepper motor and a 710-watt trim spindle. Those numbers look impressive on paper, but the real question is, does the combination translate into consistent cuts without spending a fortune on upgrades or constant tinkering? Let's start with the basics of what the machine is trying to solve. A closed-loop stepper motor means the controller can actually sense the motor's position and correct any missed steps on the fly. For a hobbyist who's still learning to fine-tune feed rates and toolpaths, that safety net can save a lot of wasted material and frustration. In practice, I've seen a few owners post videos where the router pauses briefly when a load spike occurs, then resumes without having to rehome the axis. That's a concrete advantage over an open-loop system that would simply lose steps and ruin the part. The linear rails and ball screws are another selling point. Most entry-level machines still rely on V-groove bearings, which can introduce wobble over time, especially when you push the spindle to its 710-watt limit on harder material. Ball screws, on the other hand, give you smoother motion and less backlash, which shows up when you try to carve intricate lettering in acrylic or run a pocketing operation on a hardwood board. In real-world use, the extra precision means the cut edges are cleaner, so you spend less time sanding or polishing after the fact. Now, let's talk about the work envelope. The 6060 in the name refers to a 600mm by 600mm travel area, which is a comfortable size for most small shop projects. If you're building a coffee table top, a decorative wall panel, or a batch of 12-12-inch wooden signs, you have room to lay the stock flat without constantly repositioning. The downside is that the larger frame adds a bit of weight, so you'll need a sturdy bench or a dedicated stand. It's not a tabletop-only device you can slip onto a flimsy desk. The machine needs a stable base to keep those ball screws from binding when the spindle hits a tough spot. The 710-watt trim spindle is where the machine tries to stretch beyond the typical hobbyist router. That power level is enough to cut a 1/4-inch acrylic in a single pass and to carve shallow pockets in aluminum with a proper end mill. If you're planning to stick to softwoods and plastics, you'll probably never need the full punch of that spindle, but having it there means you won't outgrow the machine as quickly. The trade-off is heat. At full throttle the spindle can get hot quickly, so you'll need to monitor run times and possibly invest in a cooling fan or a pause in longer cuts. It's not a showstopper, but it's something to keep in mind if you're aiming for long, uninterrupted runs. One of the things that often trips people up with modular CNC routers is the expansion functions they brag about. The Axiscreat is built with mounting points for add-on accessories like a second spindle, an automatic tool changer, or a laser head. The concept is appealing, but the reality is that most of those upgrades are sold separately, and the documentation can be a bit sparse. If you're buying this machine hoping it will become a multifunction hub out of the box, you'll need to budget extra and be ready to dive into the community forums for wiring diagrams. For a straightforward router setup, the base machine is fine, but the future-proof claim only holds if you're willing to invest time and money later. Who should consider the Axiscreat 6060? If you're a serious hobbyist or a small shop owner who already has a basic understanding of G-code, knows how to set up a workpiece, and wants a machine that can handle a mix of wood, acrylic, and occasional light metal work without immediately hitting a ceiling, this router lands in the sweet spot. The closed-loop motors and ball screw drive give you a level of repeatability that makes batch production feasible. Think a run of 20 custom keychains or a series of identical wooden brackets. Also, if you value the possibility to upgrade down the road, the modular frame is a genuine advantage. On the flip side,